We got the bracket. I don't have much complaining to do about who's in, who's out, because as somebody who actually looked at the bottom of the bracket yesterday and tried to distinguish between, say, Texas A&M's body of work and Michigan State's body of work and Virginia's body of work and Seton Hall's body of work, I can tell you that it got very difficult at the bottom of the bracket. You were looking at teams that you thought were safe 3 days ago, and they don't seem safe anymore. That's a byproduct of a lot of things, among them having 5 bid stealers, which shrunk the bubble by 5 spots. I mean, think about if you've got, this is what you always hear, right? 32 conference champions, auto bids, and 36 at-larges. So think about if you got 36 chairs for a restaurant. You got 36 seats. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, yeah, I got room for you, and I'm going to have room for you, and I got room for you. But then at the last minute, or in the, final 48 hours, 72 hours before you're going to open your door, somebody comes and takes 5 chairs. Well, I thought I was going to have room for you, and I thought I was going to have room for you, but we just lost 5 chairs. We only got 31 spots now. That's more or less what happened. So when you heard people middle of last week saying things like, man, I think St. John's is safe, or I think Seton Hall's got to be in, or that should do it for Providence, or, man, Indiana State, I don't see how you leave them out. Well, that might have been true with some of those teams. I know it was true with a few of those teams when you had 36 chairs. But once somebody took 5 chairs and you only had 31, then you didn't have spots for some of these schools anymore. That's why anybody complaining about who got left out too intensely is like just not looking at the math of the situation. I would have had St. John's in over Virginia, but all of those teams in that range were very, very close, and they all had flawed resumes. If they'd have won one more game, lost one less game, they'd have nothing to complain about. So I'm not interested in their complaints. Where I do think it got messy is the seeding. Iowa State should be a 1 seed, not a 2, and certainly not the worst 2. And when you make them the worst 2, you don't just screw them. You know who else you screw? The best 1, UConn. UConn's the overall number 1 seed. UConn should have the worst number 2 seed in their bracket. And they do, based on the way the committee seeded this thing. But Iowa State has the 4th best resume in the sport. And by the time we got to the selection show, there were very smart basketball people, Jerry Palm, Seth Davis, suggesting that Iowa State had the best body of work in the country outside of Purdue, Houston, and UConn. I agree. And yet they get made the worst 2 seed by the selection committee. That's inexplicable. FAU as an 8 makes no sense. Michigan State as a 9, no sense. Boise State in the first 4, no sense. I won't argue about who got in, who got out, but the seeding is all wrong. Just like indefensibly wrong. And when you hear people complaining about the selection committee or the bracket today, that's mostly what it's tied to. You got most of the teams right, whatever. But where you placed them in the bracket, that was way off.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.